but very few seem to have a direction.
Every morning, we wake up chasing something. Could be a number, maybe a title. Sometimes it's a dream we didn't even consciously choose.
We call it ambition, which sounds good, but sometimes it's just noise, isn't it?
Yeah, we run so fast. So fast that we forget to even ask ourselves, where am I really going with all this?
Because what if the goal you've been fighting so hard for, what if it isn't yours at all? What if it's just a kind of mask, something borrowed from the world, maybe polished up by social media, and then sold to you as meaning?
Maybe that's exactly why, no matter how far you run or how much you achieve, you still feel, well, empty when you finally arrive.
So today, we're deliberately slowing down. We want to look beyond that illusion, to really question what it means to live with direction, not just sheer momentum.
This is Bookcast Story Show, Billy. Bookcast number 9. No true goal. No true peace.
Ah.
#1, the trap of endless chasing. General problem.
We're surrounded by this culture that really celebrates running, constantly moving, achieving. But it never seems to ask why. It feels like everyone's sprinting, flat out, but very few people are actually steering.
Right. And that phrase from our sources, wicked current, #07, the fake goal syndrome, it's quite striking.
It is wicked current.
Yeah.
It suggests it's not just a personal issue, but something deeper.
Exactly. It implies this state isn't just, a simple mistake, but a profound, almost spiritual misalignment, like being pulled off course by a strong, unseen current.
Yeah.
It describes living without a true destination, just existing on momentum alone.
The paradox is just, well, it's staggering when you think about it. Look around us. We have incredible intellect. We've seen this explosion of technology, amazing achievements in practically every field. AI, space travel, you name it. We've got tools for communication, for efficiency, for managing resources, better than any generation before us. And yet somehow, behind all this brilliance, we struggle with the most basic question. Ultimately, what do you actually live for?
Well, I think it's because the explosion in tech didn't really come with a matching expansion in wisdom, did it? We have all the tools to build, say, a skyscraper, but we seem to be missing the blueprint for where that skyscraper should even stand, or why we're building it in the first place.
That's a great analogy.
We're just overwhelmed by choices, by information, all that noise you mentioned earlier. And the one signal we actually need, that inner guiding light, our own lighthouse, it just gets drowned out.
Yeah.
So we end up with, superior means, but maybe inferior meaning.
That perfectly captures this idea of the labyrinth of life the sources talk about, where that true guide, that lighthouse, is missing. We mistake speed for progress. We think being busy means we have purpose.
And this crisis of direction, it isn't entirely new. It's not just a modern problem. Ancient Eastern philosophy grappled with this ages ago. They stressed the need for rectifying names.
Rectifying names, what does that mean exactly?
It means understanding your authentic role, your true path, before you take action. Making sure the name or role you claim actually fits who you are. So if I call myself a builder, like you said, I need to be sure I'm building what I'm genuinely meant to build, not just, what looks impressive.
So it's about alignment before action.
Precisely. Without that foundation of self-awareness, knowing your true role, your destiny, perhaps any effort afterwards, no matter how hard you try, it's essentially just aimless wandering. The effort might be huge, the execution perfect, but it's ultimately wasted energy if the direction is wrong.
It reminds me of key performance indicators in business. If your KPI is wrong, everything you measure and do based on it is skewed.
Exactly the same principle. The Buddha touched on this profoundly when he said, right view leads all dharmas. That's such a powerful idea. It means your initial perception, your fundamental premise, your goal, your North Star, it has to be correct. If that starting point, that goal is flawed, even slightly, then the entire journey, every action, every dharma that follows, inevitably goes off course. You can pour your heart and soul into it. But if your initial bearing was off by just 1 degree, well, by the end, you're miles away from where you were truly meant to be.
And you see this misalignment so clearly when you ask people about, say, their next 5 years. The answers often feel vague, don't they? They tend to repeat these sort of inflated success models we see everywhere, CEO, celebrity, millionaire, as if these titles themselves are the destination, divorced from the actual work or the meaning or the values behind them.
They use impressive, ambitious language, but often it feels, hollow. It lacks real inner conviction or personal connection. They think they're chasing some grand ideal, but really, they might just be borrowing someone else's success story, something they saw online, maybe to fill a void inside, or maybe just because they genuinely don't know their own direction. And that is the core of this illusion of direction.
So they think they have goals because they're running hard, pushing themselves, but the goals themselves, they just don't belong to them. And this is where that idea comes in, where success becomes imitation, not creation. We lose our own center. We might achieve the title, get the promotion, but we don't arrive at any sense of peace.
It's ironic, isn't it? In the rush to be informed, to be successful, to be well off, we've somehow become directionless.
Which brings us right back to that really fundamental question we need to sit with for a moment. What if the goals you're chasing actually belong to someone else's dream? Hashtag tag tag 22. Borrowed maps and false ambitions. Root causes.
Yeah, it's so easy to confuse motion with meaning, isn't it? We end up collecting these goals like souvenirs. Each one seems louder, maybe brighter, but ultimately potentially emptier than the last. Our sources really dig into where these fake goals come from. It seems to be about chasing destinations that society praises, things driven by, well, superficial glamour rather than any deep inner conviction.
And that's the critical point, isn't it? That shift towards externalization. We start looking outside of ourselves for validation, for our definition of success.
Let's try and unpack the core reasons why we end up borrowing these maps from others. The first big one seems to be comparing ourselves to others, constantly.
Oh, absolutely. And the pressure, especially from social media, it's just relentless. It's a nonstop, carefully curated feed of everyone else's highlight reels.
Right, you only see the wins. Exactly. And it creates this pressure not just to succeed, but to visibly succeed, and often in the same specific ways as the people we perceive as being at the top. This pushes people, maybe forces them, into setting goals that are totally misaligned with their actual strengths, their innate abilities, their deeper aspirations. You end up aiming not for authentic growth for you, but trying to quickly become this acceptable public version of someone else. It's like running a race you never trained for, using equipment that doesn't even fit you.
Yeah, it sounds exhausting just thinking about it. And that constant comparison, it leads straight into the second key reason, attaching our life's value to how society perceives us.
Mm-hmm. The whole motivation shifts outward. That fundamental human yearning for inner meaning, for purpose, it gets completely overridden by this desire for external recognition. We want to be highly esteemed by our community, our parents, our peers online. And when you shape your goals based on that, they're purely based on outside standards. You're essentially running for the applause, as you said, not for the personal satisfaction of the finish line. And applause, well, it's notoriously fleeting, isn't it?
It means your definition of success becomes entirely about how others see your achievements, rather than, say, the internal satisfaction you get from creating something valuable or pursuing something that truly resonates with who you are. It becomes a performance, not a personal journey, a pilgrimage.
Exactly. And the third major cause builds on this. Being misled by media and these external standards. Because information travels so fast now, and it's often framed in extremes, the media tends to inflate and glorify very specific, often quite narrow success models. You know, the overnight crypto millionaire, the influencer who seemingly blew up in 6 months.
And crucially, what the media often conveniently ignores is the, say, 99% of people who don't make it in those ventures, or the years and years of unseen hard work behind that supposed overnight success.
Precisely. So this creates this huge, often invisible pressure. It's frequently driven by advertising cycles, by what's trending right now. People mistakenly start to believe that this specific, high visibility, often high risk path is the only way to be happy or financially secure. And they completely overlook the vast diversity of other meaningful, sustainable ways to build a life.
So what happens inside a person when all these external forces are constantly pushing down? What's the internal effect?
Well, it creates this really dangerous fragmentation within the self. The person literally can't distinguish anymore between the goals society imposes on them, the ones driven by trends, ads, all that external noise, and the true goals of their soul. The outer self, the part that's sensitive to fame, to fear, to fitting in, it just overrides the inner self, the part that actually yearns for quiet purpose and meaning.
And we see this play out in real life, don't we? In these specific, often exhausting examples. Like someone sees others going viral, so they immediately rush to become a content creator, even if they have zero genuine passion for it, or maybe no unique talent for that kind of performance. They end up constantly shifting direction, trying to mimic whatever style is popular this week, and then they give up the moment it gets hard. Because there's no deep internal compass keeping them steady when the external winds change.
Or think about the rush into e-commerce sometimes. People dive in thinking, oh, everyone's getting rich doing this, completely ignoring whether they're actually suited for the day-to-day reality of it. Supply chains, customer service nightmares, the high-risk financial investment, they just get swept away by the trend. They burn out, feel frustrated, and then pivot to the next shiny object they read about. The effort is definitely there, loads of effort, but the root motivation, it's just borrowed ambition.
And the minute that path gets difficult, they quit. Because the real motivation, the inner drive, just wasn't strong enough to push through the challenges. Sometimes we find ourselves just following a trail because it looks impressive from the outside. And we completely forget to ask ourselves, does this actually feel like home to me? Which is why that core question becomes so incredibly poignant. Have you ever reached a milestone, maybe a big promotion, finishing a huge project and felt absolutely nothing inside? #3. The cost of misaligned direction. Consequences. Yeah, when the direction you're heading in isn't really your own, life stops being a personal journey, doesn't it? It turns into a kind of performance for others. You start living for the applause, not for inner peace. Our source material really dives into the profound consequences of living this way. It argues that living without a clear, true destination actually fractures a person's entire, well, their spiritual system almost, affecting their energy, their karma, even their destiny.
Let's break that down, starting with consequence one, energy. For anyone listening today, this probably manifests as that feeling of chronic decision fatigue, maybe mental clutter, the sense of constantly spinning plates but never actually moving forward.
Why does that happen, energetically speaking?
Well, because living without that true destination, that North Star, it creates chaotic, dispersed energy. Your will, your focus, it isn't concentrated because the goal is always shifting or it's not essential to your core self. It really is like being a rudderless boat out on the open sea. You expend enormous effort just trying to stay afloat, battling the waves, instead of using that energy to move towards a specific chosen harbor.
So the problem isn't necessarily the workload itself, it's the direction of that work.
Precisely. Energy gets depleted not necessarily by working long hours on something meaningful, but by constantly chopping and changing paths, experimenting with goals that don't fit, and failing to maintain any real focus or mindfulness. Because your brain is always subconsciously trying to find a destination that just doesn't exist internally. And this leads to that deep physical and mental exhaustion, that kind of burnout that even a good night's sleep doesn't seem to fix.
Right. If the source of our energy is alignment, then misalignment basically guarantees depletion.
Okay, but the sources take this even further, talking about a karmic cost. That sounds serious.
It is. The energy drain is exhausting for sure, but the karmic cost is presented as far more severe. Consequence 2. Karma focuses on something the material calls the intentional repeated mistake.
That phrase sounds quite chilling. Are the sources suggesting that just trying hard at the wrong thing is somehow spiritually damaging? It's not the trying hard that's the core issue. It's the stubbornness. The intentional repetition of ignoring clear inner signals, signals that tell you this path isn't suitable, or that the goal feels empty. It's framed as a kind of spiritual negligence. You feel the friction, you know deep down the goal is shallow or doesn't fit, yet you keep sprinting towards it. Maybe because the external world demands it, or because you're afraid of being judged if you stop or change course.
Okay, so the negative karma isn't necessarily from doing something bad, but from persistently, stubbornly overriding your own inner truth. From failing to learn the lessons the universe is clearly trying to teach you that this path is wrong for you.
Exactly. Every single step taken down that misguided path is framed as a step away from your true destiny, working against your own potential, your own noble mission, as the source puts it. You might achieve external success, get the recognition, make the money. But internally, you still feel that emptiness because you're fundamentally out of sync with your deepest sense of meaning. The achievement feels like a disguise, doesn't it? Like a smile covering up deep confusion. And the louder the world claps for you, the quieter your own heart seems to become.
And this misalignment, this disconnect, it apparently has really dramatic consequences for what we might call luck or opportunities of success. Which brings us to consequence 3, destiny. How does living out of sync like this actually affect our destiny, according to this perspective?
Well, the philosophical link presented is quite fundamental. The idea is that the universe, or the Tao, or the natural flow of existence, it tends to support those who are living true to their authentic path. When your actions are consistently out of sync with your deepest self, with your core values, good fortune can seem to dry up. Opportunities feel like they're closing off no matter how hard you try.
So if you feel chronically unlucky or stuck, it might not be because you're lazy or incompetent. It could be because you're essentially just knocking on the wrong door. You might have great potential, but because you lack that clear inner map, you're just wandering lost in the labyrinth. The universe isn't denying you success overall. It's denying you success on this particular wrong path. Is that the idea?
That's precisely the idea presented. Your energy is scattered, the karmic weight of intentionally ignoring your inner voice increases, and your sense of destiny starts to feel like a constant struggle, an uphill battle.
We can actually visualize this whole destructive pattern using the fake goal whirlpool diagram that the sources provide. It shows the cycle. And it begins, interestingly, with looking outward. Comparison with others. That seems to be the initial spark that sets it off.
Yes, that comparison fuels discontent, and it leads directly to the next step in the whirlpool, setting goals according to society. These are those borrowed goals we talked about. The specific job title, the income bracket, the type of house or car, the things society has pre-stamped as successful.
Okay, so you adopt society's goals. But because those goals aren't aligned with your soul or your true destiny, what happens next in the cycle?
The inevitable result is a profound loss of motivation. The work, even if you're good at it, starts to feel like a heavy burden, not a source of energy or inspiration. The individual starts procrastinating, feeling deeply burned out, questioning why they even bothered, even if, by all external measures, they've actually succeeded.
Wow. So the cycle starts by looking outward, driven by maybe envy or fear, and it ends up with this feeling of deep weariness inward, driven by soul-level exhaustion. That's the spiral that traps people in performance instead of leading them to peace.
And the quiet voice of the heart, it just gets quieter and quieter, the louder the world applauds the false achievement. It really forces us to ask ourselves, what's one part of your life right now that feels successful, but maybe not truly meaningful? Hashtag 4, rediscovering true direction, practical insights, and the map.
Okay, so if we want to escape this wicked current, this whirlpool, and find some true momentum, it sounds like we have to fundamentally stop running and commit to rebuilding our inner map. This seems like it requires some deep, honest introspection. And it starts, according to the sources, with step 1. Slow down and engage in root-seeking meditation.
Right. And this isn't just about chilling out or general mindfulness, though that can help. The sources are quite specific. They suggest dedicating real time, maybe 15 to 30 minutes every day, to quiet, focused introspection. No distractions. The purpose here isn't just relaxation. It's active, almost forensic, questioning.
Forensic. How so?
Well, the crucial action is to literally write down all your current goals. Big ones, small ones, everything. And then, for each single goal, you have to ask yourself honestly, why did I choose this? What is my true motivation here?
And the sources stress that brutal honesty is key.
Absolutely mandatory. You have to look unflinchingly at the answers. Is the motivation fear? Fear of poverty, maybe fear of being alone, fear of just not surviving? Or is it vanity, wanting to keep up with friends, wanting to impress someone specific, or maybe just following the latest trend? If the root is fear, vanity, or external pressure, the advice is to bravely cross those goals off your list. This is the essential first cut, clearing out the clutter of fake goals that are currently driving your life.
Okay, hang on a minute there. Fear of poverty. That feels like a pretty legitimate survival instinct for most people. How does this perspective differentiate between, say, healthy caution needed for survival and these fake goals driven purely by societal pressure or vanity? How do you pursue purpose without ending up financially irresponsible?
That's a really important distinction to make. Healthy caution, born from real need, leads to specific, necessary goals. Things like, I need to earn enough this month to cover rent and food for my family. That's reality-based. Fake goals driven by fear or vanity tend to be comparative and often open-ended, like, I need to earn more than my colleague, or I absolutely have to hit a 6-figure income this year, otherwise I'm a complete failure. You see the difference. True survival often focuses on sufficiency, on stability, on what's genuinely needed. Fake goals often focus on external status, endless accumulation, beating others. So the idea is to cross out the goals driven primarily by vanity or keeping up with the Joneses, not the ones grounded in genuine necessity.
Got it. That makes sense. So once you've cleared away some of that clutter, those goals rooted in vanity or borrowed dreams, where do you look next?
Then we move inwards to step 2, seeking true cause and effect. This means looking deeply to identify the core life values that genuinely resonate with your heart. What activities, what ways of being truly make life feel meaningful to you, completely independent of external rewards or recognition? Is it freedom, connection, creativity, making a tangible contribution, inner peace? serving others.
So these core values become the new anchors. And once you identify them, the idea is to reset your goals around these anchors, not around those generic, stereotypical success stories society pushes.
Exactly. The goals must serve the core values, not the other way around. So if your deepest core value turns out to be, say, contribution, then your real goal might be becoming an inspiring teacher who truly impacts maybe 20 young lives, or perhaps becoming a really effective community organizer. It doesn't automatically mean the goal has to be become a millionaire, especially if that path doesn't genuinely align with or serve your primary value of contribution.
Okay, identifying values, resetting goals around them. What's next?
That takes us to what might be the most vital step. Step 3, redefining personal success. This isn't about tweaking the old definition. It's about creating a new one from scratch. The exercise is literally to write out a detailed, personal, uninfluenced definition of what success means to you, starting the sentence clearly. For me, a successful life means...
And this definition needs to be really specific, right? Not just vague platitudes.
Absolutely, highly specific to you. It might be something like, for me, a successful life means living with passion every day, creating things that add genuine value to my community, maintaining deep, authentic connections with my family and friends, and having significant control over how I spend my time. Compare that to a generic definition like achieving the highest possible rank in my corporation. It's a totally different internal compass.
And once you have this new personal definition written down,
It's not something you just file away. The practice suggested is to contemplate it every single morning. Read it, repeat it, really let it sink in until it becomes deeply etched into your subconscious. It needs to become the true inner compass that guides all your choices, filters all the external demands and pressures.
the power of this kind of realignment is really brought home in that detailed, real-life example. The sources give the story of the graphic designer.
Oh, yes, that's a powerful illustration. Externally, this person was doing incredibly well, right? High income, prestigious clients, hit all the professional milestones you'd expect after years of hard work.
Like internally.
Internally, completely lost, utterly empty, energy totally depleted, dreading each morning. And when they were pushed to identify what truly brought them joy, their answer was startlingly simple and had nothing to do with their successful career. It was, I just like planting trees, tending gardens, teaching children about nature, living close to fresh air.
Wow. Such a profound, authentic desire. But one they didn't dare to actually choose or pursue. Why not? Why stay in a job that was draining the life out of them?
Well, because of all these deep-seated fears connected to the fake goal system. They feared poverty if they left their high-paying job. They feared disappointing their parents who valued financial status. And maybe worst of all, they feared being judged as a failure or unambitious or weird by their friends and their professional network if they drastically changed their lifestyle to become, say, a nature educator or maybe even a small-scale farmer.
So they just kept living this successful but misguided life, losing energy, losing joy, day after day, drifting further from their own sense of destiny, purely to maintain an image that society approved of.
And this individual perfectly demonstrates the entire fake goal whirlpool cycle in action. Their initial misstep, choosing a path based on comparison and societal expectations, led to that internal emptiness, that spiritual injury. This eventually triggers an existential crisis, that familiar midlife or mid-career panic where you think, is this all there is?
Right. And instead of using that crisis as the crucial turning point, the opportunity to finally realign with their inner truth, what did they do?
They panicked. And they set new goals, but crucially, they set them still within that same familiar, externally validated framework, still chasing social trends.
So maybe they didn't switch to gardening, but decided to pivot from graphic design to, I don't know, AI prompt engineering, because that's the hot new thing. Or start another high-risk venture that promised quick, visible results.
Exactly. They look around for the next big thing externally without doing the inner validation first. They get swept into a new wave, a new trend, without ever stopping to find their actual roots. And tragically, they end up repeating the fake goal whirlpool all over again, just with a different label.
It's this endless energy-sapping loop, isn't it? And it sounds like it only really stops when you find the courage to stop chasing the applause, stop chasing what just looks successful.
Which leads us to maybe the most practical reflection point. If you stop chasing everything that looks successful on the outside, what would you start building instead? Hashtag 5, gentle reframe, synthesis and conclusion.
So when we boil it all down, the core learning that seems to come out of this is, well, it's not that you necessarily need more goals. It's that you need much clearer direction. And true peace, That sense of inner rightness, it seems to emerge only when your ambition, whatever it is humbly serving a purpose that's rooted deep within your soul, not when it's serving a hungry ego that's constantly chasing external validation.
Right. That inner map has to be rebuilt patiently, honestly, so you can find that stable anchor point, that root point, as the source calls it, that exists in the depths of your soul, way beneath the surface noise of fleeting societal trends.
And breaking free from that wicked current, it really requires actively, consciously cutting ties with all those fake destinations, those fleeting illusions of success. It means letting your inner self, that quiet voice, actually be the guide. Letting it cut through all the social static, so that when external things inevitably fluctuate, the market dips or a particular trend dies out, you remain anchored. Anchored by that deep inner stillness, that mindfulness that comes from living by your own definition of success.
That's precisely how you stay unshaken by the storms of external trends and social pressures. Because when your direction is true, coming from within, then temporary setbacks aren't catastrophic failures, they're just course corrections on your authentic journey.
Purpose doesn't shout, it whispers. That feels right. That quiet voice of purpose has to become the guide, prioritized over the roar of external trends and social pressures. Sometimes, maybe the bravest thing isn't to chase harder or faster. Maybe it's simply stopping long enough to genuinely ask what truly matters to you.
Because the real destination isn't some generic title or bank balance. It's the deep fulfillment, the quiet satisfaction that you find along your own unique path. The path that leads to a complete and meaningful life, one that truly honors your own destiny, your own potential, regardless of what the external scoreboards might say.
So the final question to ponder, perhaps.
Yeah.
What would actually change in your life if you started living by your own inner compass instead of constantly checking the map of the crowd? Maybe peace was never actually missing. Maybe it was just quietly waiting for you to stop running.
That's today's reflection on the Bookcast Story Show. We're Sam and Lily. Thank you so much for being here with us today. If this deep dive brought you any clarity, or perhaps just a moment of calm, we'd really appreciate it if you'd like, subscribe, and maybe join us again for the next chapter.
Until then, stay grounded, stay real, and keep exploring.